They told her the hardest part of command would be making life-or-death decisions. Nobody warned Admiral Rebecca Hale that the real challenge would come on a Tuesday morning when a routine intake briefing turned her entire world inside out. One moment she was asking a simple icebreaker question. The next, she was staring at a man who shouldn't exist, a soldier she'd mourned for 13 years, standing there with a dinosaur lunchbox and a daughter who had his eyes. When he spoke his call sign, 2 words that should have been buried with military honors, the oxygen got sucked right out of the room. Because Viper 1 didn't just save her life. Viper 1 died doing it. At least, that's what the official report said. But here's the thing about ghosts: sometimes they come back wearing worn boots, carrying the weight of secrets you can't even imagine, and holding the hand of a little girl who calls them Daddy. What happened next changed everything. Rebecca thought she knew about survival, sacrifice, and second chances. This is that story. Main content: the storm rolled in before dawn that Tuesday, bringing the kind of thick gray clouds that make even hardened sailors pause and check the weather twice. Admiral Rebecca Hale watched it approach through the tall windows of the Naval Base briefing hall, her coffee going cold in her hand. She'd been up since 4, which wasn't unusual. What was unusual were the dreams that had kept jolting her awake: the same desert landscape, the same explosion lighting up the night sky, the same desperate voice cutting through the chaos shouting, "Go! I've got the line." 13 years, and that voice still haunted her. She pressed her fingers against her temple, willing the memory away. Today was supposed to be straightforward. Welcome a group of transitioning veterans into the Civilian Contractor Mentorship Program. Review their files. Assign placements. Donner lunch. Standard procedure. Nothing complicated. Except la télé, nothing felt standard. Every routine briefing felt weighted. Every name on a roster made her wonder who else might be carrying ghosts. The door opened with a metallic groan, and the first veteran stepped through. Then another. Then 3 more. They moved with that particular cadence. The way soldiers walk, even after they've hung up their uniforms. Stiff spines, softened by invisible burdens. Eyes that scan rooms out of habit. Hands that never quite relax. Rebecca knew that walk. She'd walked it herself for years. "Good morning," she called out, forcing warmth into her tone. "Welcome to Forward Base Transition Services. I'm Admiral Hale, and we're here to make sure your next chapter goes smoother than your last deployment." A few chuckles. Good. Humor helped. She glanced at a clipboard, calling names one by one, greeting each veteran with the respect they'd earned. Former Marines, Army specialists, Navy personnel of them, carrying stories written in scars and silences. When she reached the last name on her list, she looked up. Sergeant Luke Rohr. The man who stepped forward made something in her chest tighten before she understood why. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the kind of weathered face that spoke of too many deployments and not enough sleep. Dark hair threaded with early gray, a jawline that looked like it had been carved from stone and regret. But his eyes, those, stopped her cold, storm-colored and impossibly tired, carrying an expression that felt disturbingly familiar. And clinging to his sleeve was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7, with wild curly hair pulled into 2 uneven pigtails and bright eyes that watched the room with curious intensity. In her arms, she clutched a worn stuffed fox, one ear nearly lopped off. Rebecca blinked. "Sergeant Rohr, sorry, ma'am," he said, his voice low and rough like gravel under truck tires. "Didn't have time to arrange childcare. If it's a problem, no problem at all," Rebecca heard herself say, though protocol definitely had opinions about children in official briefings. "We're happy to have you both." Why was her heart hammering like this? She didn't even know this man, except ... Something about his voice. The cadence. The tone. It pressed against her memory like a bruise she'd forgotten was there. She cleared her throat, trying to shake the feeling. The other veterans had settled into chairs, waiting. Rebecca decided to lean into her usual approach start light, break the ice, make them comfortable before diving into paperwork and placements. "All right," she said with a smile she hoped looked genuine. "Let's kick things off." Easy. I like to know who I'm working with, and call signs tell me a lot about a person's story. She gestured toward Luke. Sergeant Roar! You're up first. What was your call sign? The room felt casual, expectant. A couple of veterans grinned, ready to hear something amusing. The little girl swung her legs from her chair, humming softly to her stuffed fox. Luke Roar didn't smile. He did unshift his weight, or deflect with humor like most people did when put on the spot. He just looked directly at Rebecca with those storm-gray eyes and said, clear as a bell, toll, Viper 1. The air in the room turned to concrete. Rebecca felt every muscle in her body lock. Her clipboard slipped from nerveless fingers and crashed against the tile floor with a sound that echoed like gunfire. Someone guessed maybe her, maybe someone else. Time stretched, thin and strange. Because Viper 1 wasn't just a call sign. It was the call sign. The one she'd whispered to herself on sleepless nights. The one carved into a memorial wall at Fort Benning. The one that belonged to the soldier who'd thrown himself between her and a collapsing building, who'd dragged her bleeding body through smoke and shrapnel, who'd shoved her behind cover and held the line while she stumbled to safety. The man who, according to every official report, died doing it. The man whose dog tags she still kept in her desk drawer because she'd never been able to let them go. That's ... double quotes. Her voice cracked. That can't be. Luke's jaw tightened, muscles flexing beneath scarred skin. Yeah, he said quietly. I figured you'd react like that. The little girl tugged his sleeve, worry creasing her small face. Daddy, are you okay? Daddy. The word hit Rebecca like a second explosion. The man she'd mourned for 13 years, the man she'd fought to get answers about, the man whose memory had shaped her career and haunted her nights at her daughter, was alive, was standing 10 feet away, watching her with an expression that mixed resignation with something that looked almost like apology. Rebecca tried to speak, failed, tried again. Everyone. ... dismissed. Take 15 minutes. We'll reconvene. The other veterans filed out quickly, sensing the tension. The little girl glancing back with concerned eyes as Luke guided her toward the door. But he paused before leaving, turning back. Ma'am, he said, and the formality of it felt like a knife. Should I stay? Rebecca managed. Please. The door closed behind the others. Silence flooded in, thick and suffocating. Rebecca gripped the edge of the table because her knees had turned to water. Luke, his first name, tasted strange and familiar all at once. How are you alive? He exhaled slowly, one hand rubbing the back of his neck, a gesture she suddenly remembered from a different time, a different life. Long story, none of it pretty. I have time. Her voice came out harder than she intended. Years of unanswered questions sharpening each word. He studied her for a long moment, then moved to the window, putting distance between them. The official story isn't wrong. Exactly. I was listed as key heir because, for all intents and purposes, I should have been. That building came down on me after I got you clear. Crushed half my rib cage, punctured a lung, broke my spine in 2 places. Rebecca's hand flew to her mouth. They pulled me out 6 hours later. He continued, voice flat, clinical, medically induced coma for 3 weeks. Another 2 months before I could breathe on my own. The Army decided I was too broken to put back together officially, so they processed me through classified medical channels. By the time I was conscious enough to argue, I'd already been declared dead on paper. Easier that way for everyone. Easier. Rebecca's voice rose. I looked for you. I fought for information. They told me to let go, that there was nothing to find. I know. He turned to face her, and the raw honesty in his eyes stopped her cold. I know you did. Word gets around, even in classified wards, but I wasn't exactly in shape to reach out. And by the time he trailed off, jaw working. By the time the Army told me I was done. Medical discharge. Honorable, but done. And then, Emily, Rebecca whispered, remembering the little girl's name from the roster. His expression soft and cracked simultaneously. Yeah, Emily happened. Her mother was a nurse at Walter Reed. We connected. Got married. Had a daughter. Tried to build something normal. His voice dropped. Sarah died 3 years ago. Cancer. Fast and mean. Oh, Luke. Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes. I'm so sorry. He nodded once, sharp and controlled. The way soldiers acknowledge pain they can't afford to feel. So now it's just us. Me and Emmy. I'm here because she needs stability. Needs a father who can provide. Who isn't just ... He gestured vaguely at himself. The broken pieces of who I used to be. Rebecca moved closer, her command voice falling away to reveal something softer. Something that had been buried under rank and responsibility. She doesn't need pieces, Luke. She needs you. And you don't have to do this alone. His eyes met hers, and for a moment, 13 years collapsed into nothing. She saw the same fierce determination that had kept him moving through enemy fire, the same stubborn strength that had saved her life. But now it was tempered by exhaustion and grief, and the particular kind of courage it takes to wake up every day when everything hurts and keep going anyway. I'm trying, he said, and the vulnerability in those 2 words nearly undid her. The door opened, and Emily peeked through, her stuffed fox leading the way. Daddy, I'm hungry. Luke blinked, shifting instantly into father mode. Right. Sorry, Boog. We'll grab something. Rebecca straightened, pulling herself together. Luke. Viper 1. She let the call sign sit between them, acknowledging everything it meant. Whatever mission brought you back here, you don't have to face it alone anymore. For the first time since he'd walked into the briefing room, his hardened expression cracked not into a smile, but into something far more fragile. Hope. Trying to remember how to breathe. We'll see, he said quietly. As he let Emily out, the little girl's voice drifted back. Daddy, who was that lady? She looked like she saw a ghost. Rebecca heard Luke's response, soft but clear. Maybe she did, Bug. Maybe she did. The days that followed felt like learning to walk on a leg she'd thought was gone. Luke showed up for his orientation sessions, Emily usually in tow with her dinosaur lunchbox and her faithful stuffed fox. Rebecca found herself watching them the way Luke automatically checked sightlines in every room, the way Emily had learned to be quiet when Daddy needed to focus, the way they moved together like a 2-person unit that had survived a war Rebecca couldn't see. She also noticed the things he didn't say, the way he favored his left side, the nightmares she could read in the shadows under his eyes, the careful way he rationed his energy, knowing each day had limits his body enforced whether he liked it or not. One afternoon, after the other veterans had filtered out, Emily approached Rebecca's desk with the solemnity of a tiny ambassador. Miss Admiral, she said, and Rebecca bit back a smile at the improvised title. You can call me Rebecca, sweetheart. Rebecca. Emily tested the name, then nodded, satisfied. Did you know my daddy in the war? The question landed like a hand grenade. Rebecca glanced at Luke, who'd frozen near the door, but he gave her a small nod to your call. I did, Rebecca said carefully. Your daddy saved my life once. Emily's eyes went wide. Really? Like a superhero. Exactly like that. The little girl beamed, then leaned in conspiratorially. Sometimes he has bad dreams about the loud noises and the fire. But I hug him, and he feels better. Rebecca's throat tightened. You're very brave, Emily. That's what Daddy says. She paused, then added with devastating 7-year-old honesty. Are you lonely, too? The question struck Santa Mass. Rebecca opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. Sometimes, Emily nodded knowingly. Daddy says that it's okay to be lonely as long as you don't stay that way forever. That's why he brought us here, to not be lonely anymore. Luke cleared his throat. Emmy, that's enough interrogation for one day. But Emily wasn't finished. She looked between them with the kind of clarity only children possess. I think you should be friends. Friends help with the lonely parts, closing out of the mouths of babes, right? Sometimes the truth comes wrapped in pigtails and a stuffed fox, delivered by someone too young to understand how complicated adult hearts can be. Emily was right, though. The lonely parts all have them. The memories that wake us at 3 a.m. The losses that reshape us. The ghosts we carry until they become so familiar we forget they're not supposed to be there. But here's what I learned from Admiral Rebecca Hale and Sergeant Luke Rohr. Ghosts do you want, always stay buried. Sometimes they walk back into your life carrying a dinosaur lunchbox. Sometimes the past you've been running from is actually the future you've been waiting for. And sometimes the person you once knew, the one you mourned, the one you honored, the one you never forgot comes back different, but still somehow exactly who you needed them to be. Luke wasn't the same soldier who'd saved Rebecca's life 13 years ago. He was scarred, exhausted, broken in places that would never fully heal. But he was also a father, a survivor, and someone who'd learned that strength isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up, even when everything hurts. Even when the world says you're finished. Even when you have 100 reasons to quit and only one reason to keep going. That one reason. Sometimes she has curly pigtails and carries a worn stuffed fox and believes with her whole heart that hugs can chase away nightmares. Rebecca and Luke's story didn't end in that briefing room. It started there, a new chapter neither of them had planned, but both of them desperately needed. Because healing doesn't happen alone. It happens in the moments when someone sees your scars and doesn't look away. When someone understands your ghost because they're carrying a few of their own. When you finally stop running from who you used to be and start building who you were meant to become. So here's my question for you. What ghosts are you carrying? What past are you running from? And more importantly, who's waiting on the other side if you finally stop running? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe because I've got more stories like this coming your way, real, raw, and reminding us all that second chances don't always look the way we expect them to. Sometimes they show up wearing worn boots, carrying impossible hope, and teaching us that the bravest thing we can do isn't surviving the war. It's learning how to live after it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.